Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks.
And you're joined by Jimmy Wong.
With special guest,
Jordan Pridgeon. That's me.
That guy.
Hey.
There's three of us here today because we're having a chat.
Yeah, a fireside discussion about concessions.
Yes. Today we are bringing back the old fact or fiction segment that we did about a year ago. We hadn't really had one that we were excited to do, but now we did. So today we're discussing fact or fiction.
Yeah.
Conceding in Commander is salty.
I concede.
Is that a fact or a fiction? We're going to talk about all of the intricacies of saying that word and also of conceding in multiplayer. Is it a salty outburst that ruins games, or is it an underutilized tool?
Are there scoops that are not salt scoops?
That's true.
Scoops of ice cream.
Yep.
Salted caramel.
Oh, shit.
Today we're going to get to the bottom of it, but before we get into it, if you want to pick up any Magic cards, go to cardkingdom.com/command. They've got a huge selection of singles, sealed product, everything that you need to play this beautiful game. You're a Magic player, you're a Commander player. We know that you're picky about what cards you want. You want exactly the right printing in exactly the right condition, and you want to buy as many of them in one place. Luckily, Card Kingdom has all of that going for you. I know that I'm never more frustrated when I order a certain kind of foiling or a certain printing or something, and you pay extra for the cool one, and then the wrong one shows up on your doorstep. Card Kingdom has a great team to make sure that anything gets resolved if there are problems, but also they just know Magic cards, so what you pay for on the website is going to be the one that shows up on your doorstep.
Yep. And
it will be packaged safely so that when you open it, your cardboard won't be bent, it won't be sad, it won't be wet. Cardkingdom.com/command.
It'll be ready for your deck, which you will put into an Ultra Pro sleeve, of course. You will use Ultra Pro at ultrapro.com/command. They taught me how to use real magic.
I was going to say, we're doing the Force.
Yeah, no. It's hypnosis. Because actually, you know what? We don't even need hypnosis because Ultra Pro has all the product that you need, and they're industry leaders when it comes to sleeves, deck boxes, dice, playmats, wall scrolls. You name it, Ultra Pro has something for it. There's products on that website every single day that I look at and go, wow, why isn't that a part of my life yet? Jordan and I were just geeking out over the card sorter trays and how much improvement to our lives they have brought.
It's been amazing.
Yeah. ultrapro.com/command has all of the game accessories that you need to outfit your Magic the Gathering collection, as well as just any card game. You can be a Pokemon player, a Yu-Gi-Oh player. They got sleeves for you. They got product for you. ultrapro.com/command. They also have great deals going on all the time. So make sure you check that out and support the site while you do so. Last way to support the show is directly at patreon.com/commandzone. We love our patrons. We have a Discord where our patrons chat and hang out every single day. They can ask questions to all of us here in the office. For every patron, you get to watch game nights and extra turns a day early, ad-free, even though the ads are fantastic. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
You get to skip all those ads.
Skip all those ads so you can watch them for the first time with the rest of the general public. But yeah, you get access to those amazing pieces of content early before everyone else. As well as, when we do Patreon auditions for game nights and extra turns, you have to be a patron to be eligible for that. So basically, it's the best way to support our show because it goes directly to us, patreon.com/commandzone. And we also shout out one lucky patron every single episode. So this episode is dedicated to Tyler T. Ballard. Ballard.
You rock, Tyler. Thanks for the support.
You rock.
Thank you so much.
Let's get into it. We are talking about conceding, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Should we do it more? Should we do it less? How should we do it?
Sugar sweet or salty salty?
For clarity's sake, I just wanted to say what conceding is and what happens when you concede.
Yeah,
Let's just start there. For clarity's sake, conceding in Magic is an admission of defeat. You got me. I'm done here. The game behaves like you have lost. Your spells are removed from the stack. You and your permanents cease to exist from the game.
Oh, just the game.
Yeah, you get to keep.
I really
man.
shouldn't concede.
Don't
disappear.
If you die in the game, you die in real life.
You die in real life? Yeah, real SAO. Okay, so this is obviously concessions happen quite a lot. Mostly, however, they happen in 1v1 Magic. So you see it all the time in streaming on Arena. You press escape, you go to concede the game or quit the game or whatever the terminology is. And most of the time, conceding is done commonly in 1v1 because you just need to get to the next game.
Yeah.
So there's a clock. There's a tournament. If you're in a tournament, you go, okay, I've seen enough here. I cannot win against your mono red brutal assault. Let's just scoop it up, shuffle up so I can spend a little more time, for instance, sideboarding or preparing for the next match. So you can also just get back to playing more Magic too, because sometimes games are very clearly you're not going to win.
We've been playing a lot of Canadian Highlander around the office. And like when we're trying to get a tournament game in at lunch, we'll be like, okay, this game's over. Let's move on to the next game if we want to finish it in the hour we have.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's most, if not like many games of 1v1 Magic end in concession. It's just like, I don't need to see anymore. Let's get on to the next game. And I think it is a rush just to be like, okay, I'm not having fun in this position. I don't have a chance to dig my way out of it.
Yeah.
So let's move on to a situation in Magic where I would be having fun.
Yeah.
And it's easy because you concede, the other person wins, and you go on to the next game. It's not all of that complicated. There is some strategy to conceding that I wanted to just mention. Especially in MTGO, when you have like a specific clock, you can either strategically concede slower so you can get more information from your opponent and sort of eat up some of their clock, or you can strategically concede earlier to prevent them from gaining more information about your deck when they sideboard.
Yeah, sometimes you'll see people concede to a Thoughtseize.
Yeah.
Game's almost over, they cast Thoughtseize. Okay, I don't want they don't know I have this card in my hand or I've sideboarded in, concede in response.
Yeah, so there are like there's some strategy to concession, but it's all much simpler because the game just ends and now there's a winner.
Yeah.
And obviously Commander doesn't have a sideboard. So
yes.
different whole
in
thing.
multiplayer, it's just much more complicated.
Yeah.
Because like when one player concedes and a game continues, the entire shape of the game is altered. It can drastically change the environment of the game. I mean, just playing like a 4-player game versus a 3-player game has very different dynamics overall, let alone one where a player was there and is now gone. I would say if 3 players concede to 1 player, that can happen at any point in Commander and behaves very much like conceding in 1v1.
Where all 3 players go, okay, everyone agree the game's over?
Yeah.
Cool.
You got it. We can scoop it up. We can move on to the
Infinite
next
is on
game.
the table. No one has any responses. Cool, this game.
I'm not getting through that.
Yeah.
We're locked.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I don't need to see you demonstrate your loop 8 more times. We understand that this is infinite. We can go on to the next game. So I think that can happen at any time and is basically just ending the game.
Yeah, and you see this a lot, again, in 1v1 scenarios, where oftentimes they'll be like, all right, swing up for the win, and everyone looks, they go, no, I can't block, I can't do anything. All right, you win, cool, scoop it up, or everyone goes, all right, infinite combo assembled, everyone looks around, cool, you got it, you're done. That's the most typical case of concession, and that doesn't affect the game.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of cases where it does affect the game, because, again, one player out, like you said, someone, let's say you put a Curse of Opulence on someone, and then you concede. That could change the shape of the next combat, especially conceding at instant speed. Is something we'll obviously get into. But yeah, 1 player conceding out of 3. You know how sometimes on smaller aircraft, they have to put people equal on both sides of the plane so the plane's balanced out? So if you remove 1 person and their luggage, all of a sudden the plane goes and tilts to the other side. So that does make a drastic difference.
Yeah, I mean, it removes a huge amount of life that is just like, well, now in order to win this game, I don't have to deal 120 damage. I only have to deal 80.
Right.
So it tends to speed up the game where the player who is in the lead, suddenly it is much easier for them to close the game. And it builds up a lot of momentum for whatever player is ahead.
Yeah.
And even if there's like a certain amount of parity, like I had a situation that kind of became a fight with one of my friends once where it was down to 3 people. And the 3rd player was in a position where he was not all that dominant because he couldn't swing out at me without the other player killing him. I did something to like, piss off the 3rd friend, and he conceded so that this friend could attack me with impunity and kill me. This was like one of the biggest fights I have ever had with this friend group. But he was like, I can concede at any time. That's how the rules work.
That is their right.
That is strictly the rules.
Yep.
And I mean, like, that changes the entire dynamics of the game. And not only just removing the amount, like the barrier to winning, right? It's so much easier to win if there isn't another player there. You also remove all of the resources from their hand, all of the things on their board, all of the removal spells or counter spells in their hand or in their deck. Are suddenly aren't there to help defeat whatever player is ahead. So it can drastically shift
if
what a
anything
game
had
looks
been
like.
stolen or taken from their board, it literally removes it from the player's board.
Yeah, and how many times have you been in a situation where you feel just done? You got very little cards in your hand. You maybe have a couple mana open. You can't really do anything. And conceding, you would think, okay, sure, I'm not going to make a difference in this game. But all of a sudden, that's one less turn before he gets to go again. You may draw something. You might top deck something that can actually affect the board in a significant way. Or maybe you have the enchantment that's actually stopping one player. You have the Aven Mind Sensor out. Whatever it is that's just holding that one player back just by 2 or 3%. And all of a sudden, cutting that off completely, again, shifts the weight of how the game goes. So I think a lot of times concessions can get into these situations, like Jordan said, because not only is it affecting the game itself, it actually changes the outcome in a significant way. And that, I think, especially after you have about an hour and a half, 2 hours invested into a game, does not make things feel so great, because there are a lot of factors to consider outside of just gameplay. Now we're talking about the social aspect of 4-player games too.
Yeah, I mean, socially, this just removes you from the activity that you're doing. Like, Commander's a party game. It's a board game. There's not a lot of board games where concession is like part of the plan,
If
right?
you concede in Settlers of Catan, everyone goes,
what?
What do you mean?
You can do that?
I need your resources.
But you have sheep.
Yeah, you're the only one with sheep. So it is sort of like that social norm is tug and pull, right?
Yeah.
Because the elements of a board game that is Commander and the elements of Magic that is Commander go in opposite directions when it comes to concession. And like, if you concede, you're just like, but that's what we're doing. But we're all playing, so you're just gonna not play anymore?
Are you gonna look at your phone? Are
Like,
you gonna turn the TV
Continue
on?
sitting with us?
Yeah. Are you gonna go to the bathroom and not come back? Like,
And I mean, this is like the most relevant when you're in a trusted like 4-player situation and when you're among friends. At a game store, obviously, there's other things that you can do.
Yeah.
But like,
And I should point out that that's really the case when there's like only one pod. You're playing with your 4 friends. If there are other games firing off, you have things to consider.
Yeah, but there's this very weird dynamic of just like, okay,
all right. Okay, let's deal with what happens to the board state.
So I guess we'll finish this game, and you'll sit there sad,
or happy, you didn't
'cause
want
you-
to play, but we came to play. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? Is you watch someone run around a track and field to see them start, scuffle in the middle, and then cross the finish line.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see the order in which everyone crosses the finish line. It's fun to see someone surge from behind. We've seen these like crazy Kentucky Derbies where all of a sudden the horse is just like, you know what? No, I'm not going to lose. And they get a huge burst of speed, and it's the most incredible dramatic finish to something. So the anticlimactic nature, I think, of concessions is what makes it kind of disheartening or disappointing.
Yeah.
Especially if it's done because a player is in a bad attitude or has been soured by something by the experience. So it's adding on to the fact that they're not there, but also the reason they left is an emotional one. And it does leave everyone at the table sort of in an awkward position sometimes.
Yeah, something I was thinking about is like in Commander, I think most casual Commander players would agree that the aspect of playing Commander is way more important to us than winning Commander.
Yeah.
Totally.
So the idea of conceding when you're in a position where you can't win means that you're prioritizing the winning aspect of the game over the playing aspect of the game.
Yeah. I know we're still kind of just going over the points around concession, but I do think that there's kind of a counterpoint to be made around that, which if you are in like a tournament setting and you see that you have a 5% chance to win,
right?
You should keep playing. You shouldn't concede because you could top deck that 5%.
Totally.
And it feels really small, but so that means you don't concede because winning is important.
Right.
So there's a case to be made that because winning is not super important, if you're in a position in a Commander game
Interesting.
where you're not able to play, or like you've gotten so behind on board that your plan is never going to come together, maybe it is the right move to concede.
Yeah. Maybe you're not playing.
Yeah, if you're not playing in this game, if it's not working out, if things have gone so badly for you, then just sitting there for the sake of, well, who knows, I could top deck a thing that would bring me back,
Right.
might not be worth it to you.
Sure.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that all the time, but I think there's a case to be made there.
There's also an element where just Commander games are long.
Yeah.
And if you're not an active participant in this game, it sucks.
Yeah.
You're just sitting, waiting, doing nothing forever.
Yeah, there is something to be said, right? The earlier example I gave of professional people running around the track, everyone's going to be within seconds, milliseconds of each other.
Right.
There are times when you're playing Commander where it's like a toddler is racing against track players. Maybe they all start out the same, but all of a sudden one of the racers goes like, you know what? I need to sit down and tie my shoes for 20 seconds. And at that point, it's not only are you not playing, you're actually watching other players take 10 times as long on their turn than you do. So if you had the clock, you're like, oh my gosh, I put in 2% of the total game time of this at this point. And so, yeah, I do agree that at a certain point, you have to always weigh this. Is it actually worth it for me to continue? Because I may be actively hurting my capability to enjoy this game.
Right? Yeah.
And at that point, if it's becoming destructive, then I could see a concession making more sense. At the same time, I also would think that please don't allow your hobbies to be destructive for you. And if it's gotten to that point, maybe it is important to, because if it is, let's say, healthier for you to stop, stand up, walk outside and take a lap and take some breaths, I would 100% say go for it. As long as, in my case, my general opinion, as long as it doesn't drastically affect what's going on.
Sure.
But I would not want anyone to actively hurt themselves just because of like, oh, but I don't want to make it awkward for other players. Like, well, if you not conceding makes you 10% less likely to return tomorrow, maybe you should think about whatever it is to address your own current ongoings of your of how you feel to make sure that you at very least don't come out of this angry and resentful and carrying and harboring those emotions towards whatever's happening next.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the game integrity of the Commander game is less important than you're having a nice time in your free time. Like, yes, you can make a game more complicated. You can mess up the dynamics that like everybody was playing around. But like, is that more important than just having a fun time with your friends?
Yeah.
Or behaving in a way that you're proud of? Like if you can feel that you're not responding well to the situation,
and it's only going to get worse.
Removing yourself from that situation.
That's actually a really responsible thing and a mature thing I think a lot of people can do, because I've seen it so many times where this, in like a game of League of Legends, for instance, if you get salty at the beginning, if you disconnect, you'll be banned. So instead, you decide to just continue your Salt Lord rage through the whole game and just tank it for everyone else, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, players often wish they could remove the player in question,
right?
But the player themselves are stuck in that situation. Commander does allow you to at least make a responsible decision around that.
Well, and like, look, I mean, we've all gotten salty in games before. That's like part of playing Commander and that kind of thing. And when it happens, you're like, I feel justified. And then afterwards, you look back and go, I shouldn't have reacted like that. So sometimes maybe if you feel yourself getting into those things where you're like, I'm feeling salty, this isn't a great situation, like maybe letting yourself emotionally disconnect from it and stop playing the game is the right move to do.
Totally.
It's a really complicated decision, honestly. And I think everybody sort of makes that decision in a slightly different way. Before we get into some specific scenarios under for concession circumstances, I want to talk about our own personal use of concession as a tool. Under what circumstances would we concede? Just so we have a general idea going into it where each of us stands.
And also, I would say also areas where you would never concede.
Sure.
For instance, I would never concede if someone was swinging at me for lethal. And go like, I'm out. I think like in general, like or baiting someone into an attack so that I can then concede and someone else kills them, right? Like that sort of situation is like that. But
I think we'll talk about that kind of stuff after the break. But I want to talk about just like personally, how do you use the tool concession?
As a Salt Lord.
As a Salt Lord.
You're like aggressively.
Instant speed.
Do you have like a way that you've conceded in the past?
Yeah, I think my most common concession is a group concession, because that to me feels the cleanest. Everyone is generally in agreement, and it's sort of a vibe you can feel around the table. Like it's kind of like getting to that point where, aforementioned, not to be mentioned player that has the crazy combo lock is about to assemble it, and everyone's like, okay, either we can sit through another 30-minute turn, or we can all agree that we don't have anything in our hand or on our boards that can immediately stop this. And even if we did remove 5 pieces, it's still going to go. You kind of look around and go, all right, how does everyone feel about this game?
Yeah.
I'm ready to give them the win.
The phrase I hear all the time in one of my friend groups who are like more, they're old school vintage players and stuff, so they're a little more used to conceding as like a general thing, is someone will go, well, I'm ready to scoop to that.
Yeah.
Right.
And then people will go like, I actually might have something. And then they'll go, all right, okay, let's give it a turn.
Yeah.
And we'll like see what that is. But if he says, I'm ready to scoop to that, and someone else goes, yeah, I don't have much going on, we'll just be like, great, next game, let's go.
Totally. Yeah. That's my most common concession, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of the time that I've conceded, it has been either all three players conceding at the same time, or if I'm down to the 1v1 and I am like, I cannot beat the board state that is across from me. I've done my turn. I trust that you can figure it out. Which is sort of the other element of concessions that we haven't really talked about, is sometimes a person's taking a 10-minute turn. Yeah. They haven't demonstrated like how they're going to kill you yet, but you're like, I trust that your deck building skills are enough that you can figure this out.
That is actually really interesting though, because how many times have we bungled wins?
Yeah.
I had the win on board, but I didn't find it.
Yeah.
So a concession, in a weird way, sometimes robs your opponent of doing one of the most important things in Magic, which is figuring out how their deck wins. How the deck actually wins.
In those situations, I usually go, would you like to play it out?
Right.
Like, are you interested in playing this? If you are, go nuts.
Yeah.
If it is helpful to you to play through this situation, I'm happy to sit here. But I'm not going to be able to stop you.
I will concede in games that are going particularly long, where I feel like my engine has been destroyed to the point where it's not coming back and the game is still slow and long.
Right.
Because if I'm being honest, the time that I have the least fun in Commander is in really long, grindy games where I'm not really a piece of it.
Yeah.
And I tend to find that hoping that an hour later they ignored me enough and I draw into something to make me relevant again is less fun than being like, okay, well, I'm going to go grab a drink, maybe see if another pod fires.
Right.
And then I'll check in and see how everything goes. But like, it'll be the same sort of thing. Like, I like checking in with people before you do a concession where you go like, okay, well, with those two pieces on the board, my deck's a little shut down. I'm thinking of conceding. If someone has like reason to think that things are going to drastically change in the next turn, let me know and maybe I'll stick around. But if nobody minds, I'm going to go see if another pod or something like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think like generally I have never conceded because of salt. I won't let myself get there generally. But that is a reason that I've felt the need to concede before.
Yeah.
Which is, wow, this one player has just been bullying me the whole time. I would rather take away their ability to continue this abuse than give them more reasons to target me with whatever it is that they're doing, you know?
Rachel's not that bad. Come on.
Yeah. Rachel, biggest bully at the command zone. Kind of wild.
Huge bully.
Yeah.
Off camera. No problem.
On camera, mono white. Off camera, mono black.
We have a weird situation in our playgroup where we concede as a group kind of a lot, but AD, so my fiance, is in our group, and he likes to build decks that just turbo mess up the game.
Oh yeah.
That just create a stack that is unresolvable, and then we get to a situation where you're like,
halfway
so the
through,
next
it's like trade
5
decks?
turns are all controlled by different players, and then you'll untap, and that's after you cast 6 more free spells and draw 4 cards.
Yeah. Please no.
That certainly doesn't represent a win, but nobody wants to do this.
Yeah.
But
You're
it's
like, that
cool,
sounds neat.
though.
Can we not do it?
Yeah, so our playgroup often goes, we can call that a win. And then
I can
we'll
see
get out of
AD
this
literally
situation.
like, but guys, isn't it so cool though?
He never wants to execute it. He's like, I've had my fun.
Yeah. I proved it can be done.
I have 3 cruel entertainments on the stack.
Gosh. Yeah, that's another good reason, actually. Someone casts Warp World and 3 other things that have Warp World-esque effects. I've seen everyone just go, we're good.
Yeah.
We would rather not figure out what's going to happen
Look,
here.
proving you can install Doom on a toaster oven doesn't mean you want to play Doom on a toaster oven.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, it's so sometimes there's situations in Commander where you're just like, cool that could happen.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Yeah.
So I think that is also sort of a reasonable reason to just pull the plug on a game.
Yeah. My last reason is just exhaustion or tiredness.
Yeah.
If I'm like literally unable to play in a way that is going to benefit, I can't even contribute to the social atmosphere. This has happened at like lobby cons where I'm like nodding off. I'm like, guys, I gotta go to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to make this more fun for you by me being here right now.
But on the way out, let me blow up 3 things and peace.
Which is the way to go out.
Yeah.
With a
Board
bang.
wipe.
Yeah, exactly.
Good night.
whimper.
Good night. Yeah. Yeah. But I think the main thing for me is just conceding in a way. I enjoy only conceding in a way that doesn't affect the game, that the other players are blindsided by it, or it changes what is happening to the point where I never want someone to feel, wow, after that player conceded, this wasn't as worth it.
Yeah.
This wasn't as fun. Something got messed up fundamentally, and overall my experience has been diminished.
Yeah.
That is
Invalidated in some way.
And so I always only will concede when I find that line hasn't been crossed, I think. Because I wouldn't want that to happen to me, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's lots more to talk about on this subject. We're going to get into some scenarios on how to handle them. Is conceding the right thing? Is conceding the wrong thing? How to do it after a few words from our sponsors.
Whoa, Cinnamon! Hail, hungry friends! I'm Sir Ginger, Meal Ender! I know I can't end every meal. I mean, let's be reasonable. People need to eat something. So instead, I've made it my mission to end boring, unhealthy meals with Factor. They deliver fresh, never frozen meals that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. No more harrowing journeys to the grocery store or grueling trials of cooking and cleaning. Each Factor meal is delicious and dietitian approved, making them the perfect companion to your personal health quest. And with over 40 options each week, spanning from the keto to the calorie smart, you won't have to settle for the same cookie-cutter cuisine day after day. My favorite is the ground beef and thyme cottage pie for a delectable and hearty feast. And you can trust my opinion on food, for you may not know this about me, but I am food!
Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
All right, everybody ready for lunch, Mander?
Yeah. Oh, my food's here. Bear back.
What'd you get?
I got a cheeseburger.
I would have gotten more on it. You know, like meat or a bun, maybe?
No, this isn't the whole thing. I ordered from a service that delivers each ingredient in a separate package. Oh, here's more. Oh, man, I hate it when they send the top bun before the bottom one.
It seems very inconvenient.
Yeah, but I get a ton of packages. Woo!
Does it all show up?
Sometimes, most times. Well, if the price of beef happens to change between the time I order and delivery, they might just cancel the whole thing.
This is a terrible system.
Yeah, I guess it is.
With Card Kingdom, you'll always get every card you order in one convenient package. No wrangling tons of envelopes and tracking numbers. Plus, they've got great customer service that will go above and beyond to make sure your order is perfect. When you go to cardkingdom.com/command, you can support the show while shopping from Card Kingdom's huge selection of singles, sealed product, and more. Again, that's cardkingdom.com/command.
All right, and then I'm going to attack.
Ooh, maybe it's the meat. Nope. Catch up. Ugh. Do you guys think this is near mint?
Okay, I think we've taken this metaphor as far as it can go.
Hi there, I'm Redshift. You know, there's nothing more important than love. And I love going fast! That's why nothing gets my heart racing like my RAYCON wireless earbuds! I don't have time to take an hour-long pit stop for dead batteries when I'm zipping through my favorite podcast at triple speed! But with RAYCON's quick charge function, 10 minutes gets me an hour and a half of juice! That's the kind of fast I'm looking for! Plus, their latest model is better than ever! They got 32 hours of battery life, multi-point connectivity, and all sorts of sweet activated abilities! Heck, these earbuds even come with active noise cancellation, which is great when you've got to block out engine noise! Vroom, vroom! And just like me, RAYCONs are efficiently costed, starting at just half the price of other premium brands. With a price like that, I knew I had to snap up a pair quick, especially since they came in my favorite color, yellow! What, you thought I was gonna say red? Joke's on you, I'm a complex person!
Go to buyraycon.com/command to get up to 20% off site-wide. That's right, you'll get up to 20% off everything on Raycon's website, including 20% off all headphones too, when you go to buyraycon.com/command. Again, that's buyraycon.com/command. And then I'm gonna flash out Illusory Ambusher. I will bolt it to draw 3 cards. I will sneak attack out Triskaidekaphile. I'm gonna go to my upkeep and I will win the game.
That was your first time playing the deck?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first time in paper. I've already goldfished it like 100 times on ARCHIDEKT. Their playtester is super user-friendly. Playing cards just takes one click, and you can mulligan, tutor, and move through your turns with the press of a key. There are simple menus with counters and copies, and you can take notes on cards as you play them.
ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest Commander decks. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about concessions. Conceding is salty. Fact or fiction.
Give them all 5 cards.
I didn't know we were trying to say that together. So
Yeah.
I feel a
Everybody,
little thrown off.
fact or fiction.
Graphics.
Yeah, we don't have a theme music for it.
Editors put in huge, crazy graphics. Bob
No,
Barker
they have to
strolls
do
on
that when you
stage.
say that.
No, they don't. They don't. Because the podcast listeners don't know, and it would be unfair to them to show a really cool graphic. So I concede to that. Okay.
The first situation we want to talk about when conceding is some of the more obvious ones, the more cut and dry ones, but just so you have our opinions on it overall. The first one we're talking about is conceding to deny some sort of mechanics on board. Usually this is lifelink or damage triggers.
Right.
Like if there's a scenario where you're being attacked for lethal, but you scoop before that damage is dealt, to deny them all the lifelink, or to deny them like the sort of feast and famine trigger, or something like that.
If all your stuff has been goaded and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to concede so that they don't
have to
deal
attack.
damage to that player.
Right.
Yeah, to deny a player any stolen permanence of yours is one I think of. Like if somebody casts an insurrection, and you're like, fine, I scoop. Now you don't have anything to kill the other players with.
Yeah.
Those are all sort of examples of using concession as like a spell.
Yeah.
Right.
As a magical effect.
Yeah, I cast Teferi's Protection, but except I die.
There's no way to interact with it. There's no way it invalidates a spell. It like counters an effect basically without any sort of magical reasoning for that. It feels hollow and honestly just rude.
And spiteful sometimes.
Spiteful, yeah.
And this is the true salt.
It's a game action with like a 0% expected value. There's no way that doing this makes
Gives
it more
you
likely
any
for you
value.
to win the game.
Yep.
Which makes it just extra salty.
I want to throw an asterisk on this one because if you have an onboard way to take yourself out of the game.
Wait, who would ever do something like that?
For me, go nuts.
That's crazy different.
Like that's totally different because that's not conceding to me. That's like you have a magical effect.
Yeah.
That you can use to counter a magical effect.
That's
and you can do it in a spiteful way, but it's like you're
It's
actually
a legal game action.
It's a legal game action.
That's falling nobly on your own sword.
Yes. And
Noble is a word for it, yes.
Yeah. It's falling on your own sword. I mean, I think this, and I've definitely done it. There was a game of extra turns where I think you were attacking me. Somebody was attacking me with a sword,
and I had
a way to kill myself before damage was done. And I was just like, all right, I can take myself out of this game, and I'm going to.
Yeah.
So like that feels sort of cool and interesting and strategic.
And I think it's important to say that it's way funnier.
It's way funnier.
Way funnier.
Entertainment value through the roof.
Easy.
Than being like, oh, you think you had me, but I have me.
Yeah.
Is so different than just being like, oh, you thought you had me, but I'm taking my ball and going home.
Yeah, so it's a big difference here, right? Concession is not necessarily an in-game action. It is a game that is an action that takes you out of the game and has effects on the game. Often, I mean, the way that we talk about weaponizing concession like this, it literally makes it one of the most powerful spells in the world at the cost of your own game, I guess. Lifelink matters a ton, especially in tight races. If someone has to very carefully divvy up the attackers in a way, and you concede being like, well, if you had conceded before I attacked, I could have actually just won the game outright. So I think there are a lot of times when weaponizing concession is, I mean, one, I think it's just highly frowned upon in general. And it also kind of brings up the fact that there's like an unwritten rule sometimes that you should concede at sorcery speed on your turn to prevent exactly this type of situation.
Right. And I think conceding in this way is not in the spirit of what concession means.
Right.
It's part of the reason why I wanted to define conceding up top.
Yeah.
Is it's you've got me, I've lost. And conceding in this way says, you've got me, but I've got you.
I can do one thing that's kind of weird and unfair on the way out.
And it's like, it's impossible to interact with, it's impossible to prepare for, and it's just one of those things that you're like, it's not in the spirit of what conceding actually means.
Yeah.
It's, I concede to you, you have won this game.
Imagine if you could counterspell a concession.
Oof. No. Well,
You have to
you
play.
can. You ultimate Karn liberated. Start the game.
Here we go.
Let's do it again,
baby. Why not?
Welcome back.
I concede before that even starts.
So I think we're on the same page for that. Don't concede in a way that is actively harmful to the game, especially to deny people stuff that they have, frankly, earned in the game.
Yeah, and you will find that doing this very quickly will remove you from scenarios where you even get the chance to concede because players will not want to play with you.
Yeah.
This is definitely one of the fastest ways to make me go, oh, maybe not next time.
The next thing I want to talk about is conceding for personal reasons. This one's also fairly cut and dry for me. If you have to concede for like a real reason, if your health is being harmed, if you have to go, if you just have to leave the venue, if you have to go to bed, because I am feeling unhealthy and tired.
Someone is calling you. That is important. You have to take this call, and it will take longer than it is comfortable for the rest of the players to wait for.
If an opponent's behavior has made you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, or you have been having a bad time, all of those, get out of there.
Go for it.
Yeah.
This is not a tournament setting. There are no stakes. You should not stay in a position where you are having an actively bad time, where you have to leave. You have to
If the stakes are ego or pride, it's okay.
Yeah.
Those are all okay things to concede to because you have a valid reason to do whatever it is that's coming up.
Yeah, if you know that you have to leave early because of something, try and give your opponents a heads up.
Yeah, I have a train I have to catch at this time just so everyone knows. I'm going to try and play fast, but I may have to leave at some point. Everyone goes, cool, great.
We'll play our fast decks.
We'll play our fastest, or we'll just know that when you concede, it's not due to the reasons that are going to create a bad situation.
And I mean, just like all the situations we said before, communication is just really key in all of these, which is something that honestly can be tough for a lot of Magic players, especially if you're playing with people you don't particularly know. But, we've all kind of had similar experiences when we're not having fun with the game or we have to leave suddenly and stuff. And as long as you're communicating with people, it goes over better than you expect most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, if you just say you know what, I started this game and I'm just not feeling super invested and I'm distracted by something else. I think I'm gonna leave this game. Nobody's gonna be like, well, that was rude.
Yeah.
You take care of yourself first. Obviously, this is a hobby. Who cares?
Yep.
Yeah, there's also that element, right? That's a great point, which is I'm distracted, I'm not playing great, I'm not having fun. And it may actually be more fun for your opponents to not play with you either if you are constantly on your phone or something's coming up or you have to deal with something. You're like, I got to do some work at the same time as playing this game. It may actually be more fun for your opponents to not play with you. So you could be actually increasing the quality of the game as well through a concession if you realize that, right? There's just a lot of self-awareness, general communication, and I think that solves almost every major social issue in Magic.
Yeah.
In Commander especially. It's just communication.
Almost anything is more important than a game of Commander.
Yep.
Yeah.
So take care of yourself, take care of whatever you need to. That's all going to be fine. Just be nice to your opponents when you do so.
Just because we've spent 10 years podcasting about it doesn't mean it's actually that important.
It means there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, truly.
The next scenarios we're going to get into are a little less cut and dry. They're a little less obvious. Hopefully there's a little bit more discussion around them. And I want to talk about this next one because I do think it's an interesting context for it.
Yeah.
It's conceding during recorded gameplay.
Yeah, this is becoming more and more common. We've seen people at conventions put up a camera being like, can I film this game? Can I stream it? And obviously, as more and more people become content creators, we know there are a ton of people that are content creators in our audience, and the Magic content production scene grows. There comes often many points when you're playing with someone like Cassius or whatever, where a concession during a recorded game is not only something that lives on in your memory, but potentially forever on the internet.
That could be your thing.
Yeah. Concession kings.
Yeah, I mean, let's just answer the question for each of us before we get into this conversation. Would you ever concede during recorded gameplay, Jimmy? Or have you?
I have, but I believe it's only during game nights when we go, okay, Jimmy, you could pass the turn back. It's very clearly that you're dead on board. We don't want to edit another turn of combat and the shing gong gong things happening.
Right, it's expensive.
So let's just finish the game, shake the hand. I see you got me, concede.
Yeah.
When the producers are like, please, please concede, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Can you win? No? Great, you're dead.
Please concede, yeah. That's the only time I think I would concede during a recorded gameplay. In general, though, I don't concede that much unless, again, it's the group concession, so.
Yeah, I think the only time I have conceded is when it is down to the 1v1.
Yeah.
When it is like, even in recorded gameplay, if all 3 players are dead on board to 1, generally we play that out. But if it comes down to just 2 players, it's like, yeah, all right, you got me. Like there was a moment, I was playing against Joe Johnson and he had me locked out with an Enchantress deck. And I was like, every way that I have to kill you deals damage.
Is done.
Right.
Yeah. If this is farewell, I can win the game. If it's not, I cannot.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and the game was over.
Right.
So it's one of those things, like when you get down to the 1v1, I will do it. But before then, I don't think I ever would.
Yeah. You're also setting an example for everyone that watches, which is always important to me. So that's why I like killing myself with an Ancient Tomb, because it's funny and it shows a way to concede in a way that's not really conceding. But yeah, in general, I don't think concession is just it's not even on the menu of options unless it's a 1v1 in that scenario.
I feel like I never would in a recorded game. And it's not necessarily just because it's like, oh, you can get a reputation for that. It's because I don't think I'm so good at Magic that I'm ever 100% sure that I'm like not missing some way I could be winning.
True.
It's like you conceded with a win on board. You're like, I did?
No! This can't be! Now everyone knows I'm a doofus! And you have to keep that illusion, you know.
Yeah, that you're not a doofus.
Yeah, it's important.
The doofus wall is really important.
Wall of doof.
I mean, I think it goes back to a lot of the things we were talking about in the beginning of the episode where it changes the dynamics of the game. It can invalidate what it feels like. So when you're recording a game to be like enjoyed and watched, having a game just end abruptly in a weird way is what you want to avoid.
Yeah.
So all of the like problematic parts of conceding in multiplayer are heightened by if you concede on camera.
Yeah, you actually make the game anticlimactic to the point where the piece of content may suffer greatly as a result.
Yeah.
Not just the social group of the people playing, but like the actual video, people will watch it going, well, that wasn't a fun way to end.
Yeah. And you don't have any of those like personal reasons as an excuse when you're doing recorded gameplay.
Yeah.
Because you sat down, you signed up, this is what I'm doing, you have blocked out your time for this. Like, you don't have the like...
Oh, yeah. And for instance...
Like, I gotta go.
if you conceded early on an episode of Game Nights or Extra Turns, you don't get to get up and go do other things.
No.
Yeah, you're at the table, bucko. Sorry. I think as a public personality, part of like the challenges of being in my position is that people, I hate the phrase, never meet your heroes, because I don't want to, and that makes me play, I think, really consistently, both on camera and off camera. And so I like to treat situations where I'm off camera as in like, what if I was being recorded right now? Would I like to watch what happened later and be happy about it? And if the answer is no, then I'm like, okay, I should evaluate what exactly is I'm doing, because, you know, we all create vibes wherever we go, and you don't want those vibes to be tarnished by your behavior, especially in a way that makes you guilty or feel bad or hold some sort of extra sad energy about it later on.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, with us being like members of the, like recognizable faces in the community, it does change our relationship with concession, even at like a game store.
Yeah.
Because if somebody sits down with you, they're like,
they want to play with you, maybe.
Like, if they know who you are, they're excited about it. If they don't, then you know, it doesn't really matter. But sometimes, like, the odds of somebody sitting down with somebody who are very excited about this game and you just being like, I'm not feeling it, I'm going to go.
Yeah, vibes are off. Yeah, because that one
disappointing.
That one extra turn that you were going to take that wasn't going to be super splashy is more time that this person gets to spend playing with you or whatever it is, right? So like you're actually taking away, there's a different currency that you're also removing there if you're going to concede like that.
Yeah, or if they're going to kill you in some cool way and you're like, you got it.
Let them have it.
No,
I love that.
You know what? I'm going to strip this memory away from you. Trauma. Like,
you thought you were going to strip lock Jimmy Wong?
Nope.
Jimmy Wong's gonna strip lock Jimmy Wong.
Yeah. I mean, like if they mind slaver lock me and that's gonna give them a great story to tell for the rest of their lives, freaking go for it.
Go for it.
Just don't have any Cheeto dust on your fingers when you
careful, please. Yeah, so it is this sort of alters our relationship with concession just overall, but we all play games that are not public games.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think conceding during recorded gameplay is largely inappropriate, and it should be done very carefully.
There has to be a very good reason if it's not in like a clear, this makes sense scenario,
right.
I think, yeah.
All right, this is one of the big ones, is just conceding when you're behind. Is it appropriate for a player to concede when they feel like they're out of the game?
Well,
I think it depends on how sure you are you're out of the game.
Yeah.
Because the problem with Commander is you're just not all that sure most of the time. A long time ago, me and Josh got to do an episode on like politics and stuff. And one of the things we talked about is like in an arch enemy scenario when everyone's like, well, this person's probably going to win. Even if you're the fourth person, if you are letting everyone fight that arch enemy while you like kind of build up, you can come back and take it back from there like quite often.
Yeah.
This is now known as the Rachel strategy. But
my game's over, said Rachel on turn 5. She then won on turn 9.
We got there.
But it is like there's so many scenarios in Commander where the game is going to shift so much from where you are now to when the game ends that it's not super fair to say, I'm so far behind, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, there's sort of an interesting effect when you're that far behind and everybody just leaves you alone and you're not being attacked and your stuff's not being removed. It's sort of like you take 3 extra turns just sort of in your own little bubble.
Yeah.
They're not extra turns, but like in 1v1, when you're behind, they're going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like you don't have time.
They want to add pressure to keep adding it on.
Right.
Yeah.
So it snowballs and it's very easy to tell when you're like, I'm
like I'm no outs, I'm dead on board.
Yeah.
If you're deeply behind, it's often not the right move for the other players to be using resources to kill you unless they have nothing else to do with them.
Yeah.
It's very likely you can come back into this game as long as you like I was playing a game recently where a buddy missed a bunch of land drops. Like a bunch. I think he got stuck on 3 lands.
Yeah, what about it, Rachel?
And it wasn't Jimmy, believe it or not. And we just didn't kill him. He just had no blockers. He had we just didn't because there was other things going on.
Yeah.
And he made a real bid to win that game. Like he drew a land and then that got him another land and he made a run for it. So it was one of those things where you're like, you're not out until you're out.
Underdog story. It's like the most relatable trope in cinema and storytelling ever. People love rooting for the underdog. And if it's you in that case,
Yeah, if you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying the people you're playing with, that's a different reason. Like obviously if you're behind, like that adds to it. But I don't think you should scoop because you're like, everybody else got out to a faster start. I'm out of this game.
Yeah.
I think there is a point though. And I think... So I think back to times that I was like, I want to scoop in this game. And I do think for every time when you're like, wow, I made a big comeback, there's 1 or 2 times where you sit in that game for another hour and a half and you go, man, if I had scooped, I could have had pizza by now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And I'm not saying that means like do it all the time, but if you can manage to like, gracefully without making people upset, pull yourself out of a game that you're not enjoying like that. Yeah, sometimes being behind on board is enough of a reason.
Yeah. I mean, another really valid point is if you're at a MagicCon or even a party with more games going on, like Jordan said, like your concession into a new game could be like, you know what? My deck really wasn't matched up for this. Everyone's playing turn 5, turn 6, win combo type things, and I've got a battlecruiser deck. So I can't change my deck mid-game, but I also only have 4 more hours at this party before I got to go home.
Right.
So at that point, I think you're valuing your time and your ability to enjoy as much Magic as possible versus potentially disrupting a game. I think if you have a non-meaningful impact on the game at that point and conceding isn't going to really mess with the dynamics, then that's totally okay. Especially if it's like, I got to just go do other stuff.
Yeah. Or if like there's a lot of game left. Where you're just like, I don't know. I got 3 mana. It's turn 5. Everybody else has 10 mana.
Yeah, I have no cards in my hand.
Your commander's been turned into a forest.
Yeah.
There's no way I can get it back. My whole deck is built around this thing. Yeah.
Where you're just like, it's going to be a really long game. Like life totals are high. Those are situations where it feels like you start to consider it more strongly. If
your time is valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, if it is, I could get 3 more games in or sit in this one and not do anything and only play 1 more game tonight.
Go play another game.
Get out of there.
That's fair.
Yeah. I would say the main reason that you don't concede when you're behind is that there is a skill to be built in playing from behind as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really valuable skill. And understanding, like one of the most fundamental skills you learn in Magic is playing to your outs. And if you're able to foster that, then that's something I think will benefit you across your entire Magic career.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to think about in deck building too, and it's something people don't consider. Like Commander players, especially when you kind of get into battle cruiser mode, can have a lot of cards that are built to be really good when you're kind of already ahead.
Yeah.
And having to play from a behind position can help you realize which cards in your deck are the ones that help bring you back to parity, help set things up so that you can get back into a competitive position, and which cards are useless in a lot of games.
Yeah.
You know? It can change your perspective on things a lot.
Yeah, if you have like a looter on board and you're behind, every time you draw a discard, you're given a chance, almost like a little quiz, to be like, what do I actually need here? What do I need to do?
Oh yeah, you will never spot the win more cards more than when you're behind.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh, this doesn't do anything unless I'm winning. Great.
Yeah. Also, like, there have been a lot of game nights games where I've won by being player 4 and being behind on everyone else because I didn't realize it, but someone had Descent into Avernus in their hand.
Sure.
And that completely changed the dynamic of the game when it landed. But had I conceded early, I never would have experienced that. I never would have given myself the chance to win. And those wins can feel really satisfying.
Here's an interesting thing, like a question that I just thought about. I wonder if there's not a social reason, if there isn't a external reason to concede from a Commander game, if I ever do it when I'm the only one player, when I'm the one person conceding and leaving multiples in the game. Like, I don't know if there is a mechanical reason why I would scoop out of a Commander game if I wasn't like, oh, there's more games to be had, or like there's, I'm hungry, I need to do with something, or like my laundry's done or whatever. I'm always playing
I
at a
need
laundromat.
to feed my cat.
It's because most of the time, mechanically, I'll try and dig my way out of it, or I'll try and do something, or I'll just like want to stay and hang out with everybody. But so it feels like the reason that I'm conceding when I'm behind isn't that because I'm behind. It's because there's some sort of external factor.
Yeah.
That is like making it feel appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what are you valuing overall? Is it you are valuing your, like, because let's say in a game, we all contribute a percentage to total things done in the game. And when you're behind, it feels like you're only contribute like 1 to 5%. But you're also forgetting that sometimes that 1% you do can actually explode into a 20%, 25% difference. And I think you're valuing, would I rather do something else or not be in the situation, not be in the social dynamic or whatever it is, versus giving myself the chance to at least make some sort of impact on the game, meaningful or not. So I think in general, players maybe don't realize that they can always have a larger impact. You could even be on the side politicking, right? Like there's a lot you can do in Commander outside of just playing cards. You can be like, look, I'm behind, but I am paying attention to the board state, and everyone needs to pay attention to that Beast Whisperer. And if you don't, it's going to run you over. I've seen it happen before. They're loading up this hand to ready to play 6/1 drops next turn or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think like those elements contribute to it. But yeah, if it's not a major external factor, conceding when you're behind, I think just robs you overall of the chance to learn more about how to play the game with other people, but also like how to play your outs.
Yeah. Up next, conceding when you are locked out of the game. Is it appropriate for? I concede, guys. I can't get in.
I conceded, and then they locked me out.
Is it appropriate for a player to concede when they can no longer take meaningful game action? So that's sort of the question that we just had, but I ratcheted it up a bit.
Crank.
Where it's like, maybe you're the only one locked out. There's a blood moon on the board, and then you're like, all right.
Yeah.
I mean, I could sit here and wait for this blood moon to get blown up, but
I'm just going to say, I kind of think yes on this one. Like, if you, and here's the thing, it's again a matter of like how well you know your deck, how well you know the outs and things like that.
Yeah.
If I'm playing a deck I've just recently built and I couldn't for sure say there's like not a way out, then I'm probably not going to do it. But if I'm like, then I'm probably not going to concede. But if I'm like playing my Boros counters equipment deck, and I know for sure that it doesn't have an answer to that thing, and I'm not going to be able to play any more creatures or attack with the ones that I have. Like, yeah.
See ya.
You got me.
And I think that's kind of why I don't like pieces that lock players out, is because it puts people in the situation where you're like, there's a solemnity on the board.
Yeah.
And I can't put counters on any of my permanents, and that's what my deck does. And like my way to get rid of solemnity is themed around +1 counters.
Yeah.
So none of these are going to buy.
Cool. When I remove a counter from this creature, it can destroy. That's not going to work.
That's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, if you're locked out of the game and you're like, I'm not going to get out of this Winter Ore block, I'm good to call that. You defeated me with that.
Yeah, you feed all of us with that.
But it's a matter of knowing your deck and knowing the interaction pieces and knowing what you could top deck that could make it go different.
Yeah. Also, do you really want to spend your time convincing another player to remove it when it's actively hurting you? Because it's actually not in that other player's interest necessarily, right? So yeah, this is a little more clear cut. I think if it's, for instance, someone being like, oh, I can't play the game because my only blue source is getting Rashad imported by you every turn, then the concession is a little...
Good on you for Rashad important.
Yeah,
in Commander.
I'm just I'm in a Canadian Highlander.
I know.
That's exactly what I thought you said. I was like, Jimmy's been playing too much Canadian Highlander.
Somebody is paying 2 mana every turn to lock down your blue source.
If that's the case, then I think a concession isn't as great because you're actively denying another player a resource.
Sure, yes.
And that is something that opens up other players that hurt them and all that stuff. So I think that's a little bit different. But yeah, full-on lockdown, Blood Moon, you have no way of actually removing enchantments in your deck. Other players are not having a problem with it. You can be pretty safe to concede there. But even then, I would say you can still potentially play your outs.
Yeah.
If there's a Leyline of the Void on the board when you're playing a graveyard deck and you're like, I can see the 3 enchantment pieces are in my exile pile.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. And I think that's fair. And I think like we're all sort of in the team like, yeah, you're allowed to scoop out of that game. And I think if you're the type of person that doesn't love when a person concedes out of the game, don't play those cards.
I think, and I know there's a lot of people who are like, people shouldn't play stacks in Commander. I think people should be allowed to play stacks in Commander.
Oh, totally.
Fight me.
Yeah.
But I think if they lock you out, you should be allowed to concede from that.
Yeah, you should not be surprised from the results of playing stacks, but you can certainly play stacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it in a way where it's like, well, your Blood Moon is the reason that I'm flipping this table. But you can be like,
that gets me.
You have found my weakness, sir.
Yeah. It's one of the only ways to beat Josh Lee Kwai, to be honest.
All right. I wanted to talk about concession etiquette before we go. We've alluded to a little bit of it. So generally do it in a kind and communicative way is something that we've talked about. We've talked about the sorcery speed and on your own turn rule. For me, I think that's a little strict. I think it could be like when the stack is clear and you're in a main phase, like anybody's main phase, you're like, all right, nobody's cast a spell. And it's like, I see what you've done and that's enough for me. I don't think you have to like
wait until it's your turn again.
I untap, I draw, and now that it is my first main phase, I concede. You just do it when it's not like in the middle of something happening.
There are real scenarios where waiting for your next turn could be a 40-minute experience.
Yeah.
I've waited enough lines at Disneyland in my life. I don't need to do another one here, especially when there's no actual ride at the end of it.
When the ride at the end is, I'm going to go.
Yeah. You're trying to leave the park. Yeah.
It's a line to get out of the ride.
Yeah. If you can skip that line, oh man, every time.
It's why you leave concerts early. So you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
I think like as long as there's nothing going on, you're not doing it in response. There isn't like an insurrection has been cast and they're going to combat. Like you guys know what we mean. I think the rule at sorcery speed on your own turn is a rule made up by gamers that feels like you can't you can't cheat that.
It feels to me like it's sorcery speed on your turn only. And that's it.
But what they're really saying is
impractical. What they're really saying is just like don't be rude.
Yeah, don't be rude and don't use your concession as a powerful magic spell that does not exist on any card in the game.
Right. It's a free emblem we all have.
Yeah, we all have. You may concede at any point to destroy the stack and ruin your opponent's effects. Like, whoa, okay. Especially when your opponent's trying to do something cool. Like, man, imagine a salty concede against a new player. That's about to do their first ever insurrection win or whatever. That to me is like the absolute no-nos of concessions. But yeah, I do agree that it doesn't have to be on your turn. It doesn't have to be at sorcery speed. I just think it just cannot affect the game in such a way that it reduces the player experience for everyone else.
Yeah. Something that we didn't really talk about, but I want to mention here because it's a new player thing. Don't expect your opponents to concede. Don't put your opponents in it. Don't ask them, do you concede? Because that has happened to me before when I was a new player. They were like, okay, I make infinite blue mana, I draw my whole deck. Do you concede?
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, to what? You make infinite blue mana, you draw your whole deck. Like, I get it.
Do you yield, sir?
But it was one of those situations where I was like, how am I dead?
Yeah, well, I don't actually get what's going on.
And it was like, I can take infinite turns and I can hit you with a Mole Drifter. And I was like, really?
You're like, show me that.
Like, okay, I guess do that. Like, and it was just one of those situations where it was a new player. I was used to playing board games. I was more on the board game side than the Magic side. And when I was expected to concede, I was put in this situation where I was just like, but nobody got to the end of the board game.
You're right. Well, I'm not dead.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
So if you're going to play cards that lock people out, if you're going to play infinite combos, if you're going to play like something that wins the game on the spot, be prepared to demonstrate that the person is going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
And
show the loop. Yeah, I think asking
Otherwise,
for a concession is definitely on the more, this is your choice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's not what someone else should be forcing onto you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it could be like an LSV situation. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
He played, it was like a Pro Tour or something like that, and he was playing a combo deck, and he forgot to include the win condition in the deck. But he won a bunch of games because when he got to the combo state, people were like, I concede. Look it up.
He's just sweating. He's
really
like,
funny.
Please concede. In those situations, time is very important, right?
Yep.
So that's hilarious. That's incredible.
My gosh. Yeah, the other one I wanted to ask, because I think it's kind of interesting, is if a player concedes, do you expect them to hang out? And like under what circumstances? Like, should they stay at the table?
If it's just your local play group and you only have 4 players, I think, you should stay at the table.
Yeah, I mean, you can go get a drink or whatever, but like,
take a bathroom break.
Come back and hang out with your friends.
Yeah, I think like the feel bads are when someone concedes, goes, and then doesn't say anything, walks away, doesn't contribute, because, you know, if you wanted to play more games that night, it kind of feels a little awkward now.
Right, yeah. And that lack of communication is what the issue is. So you can just be like, all right, I think I'm out of this game, and like, I'm going to get a drink and
I think it's both for your
game.
benefit and the table's benefit to stick around if you can.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if they're your friends, and the game should never be above that, right?
I kind of think, look, even if these people aren't your friends, if you're playing with people at a game store, always try and concede on good terms. Like, there's nothing anyone can do in a game of Commander that should make you...
Don't concede angry.
Totally.
Like, actually be enemies with those people.
Yes.
Oh, and this is just like a weird edge case, but I've seen it happen a couple times, especially when like new players get into the game. But I've seen people, you know, because Commander has a lot of like little unwritten rules and things that are social faux pas and stuff. And I've seen someone who's a little new do something like blow up a bunch of lands that someone has or something. And then the other person is like, oh, well, if you're going to play like that, I concede.
Right.
And it's sort of treated as like, well, I'm teaching them a lesson about the game. But what that really is kind of doing is also being the problem.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you're not teaching anybody anything at that point, right?
Yeah,
You're
just
punishing
adding more
them.
bad vibes.
Like, can you imagine if a teacher, like if a kid did something wrong on his math homework, it's like, well, if you're going to do math like that, then I quit. Like, that's not teaching.
You can't divide by 0?
Like, that's not teaching.
You're going to kill us all.
It's teaching in a way that doesn't, I think, increase the overall goodness of what's happening.
Yeah.
It just adds, it's like ending a, man, it's... It's like this one time, we've all seen Toy Story 3 here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Someone edited the movie so that as the toys are going towards the furnace, they just cut to black and start rolling the credits. It's like, don't do that, right? There's an actual ending that can be here. And ending on the wrong note really creates that energy and it'll perpetuate in that way. So I think like there is a lasting emotional impact with concessions. So that is always something to be careful of, for sure.
Yeah, you're not going to learn how to play Magic in a way that is like fits the social contract. You're going to learn don't play Magic because there are jerks.
Or concede like this next time you're not having fun. And you're in a new scenario with people at a Magic Con. Everyone goes, oh, that was a bummer. Where'd you learn that from?
Yeah, I just feel like no matter how a game ends, you want to walk away, even if it was like the worst slog of a game or a huge pub stomp, just be like, good game. Find something good about the game and, leave with that.
Yeah.
I don't think Commander players should do this necessarily, but I always liked in tournament play that like players shook hands.
Yes.
I really like the good luck thing in MTGO where it's just the social norm.
Every now and then shows up as a huge fight on Reddit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's nice. I think it's like it's sportsman-like, and at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. Yeah. And like, you don't leave the soccer game before you shake all the hands at the end. It's just like it may feel stupid, but it's part of it. So I think that's a big part of it is just like be a good sportsman. You're a bad gamer if you just like flip the table and leave. Like that's just not. It's just not good strategy.
Yeah, well, life strategy.
It's just not good life strategy.
Yeah, well, it's also admitting and understanding that you're letting go of the fact that this is just a game, and it shouldn't have a larger impact on your life, whatever that means, right? Like, but in your understanding that the game has a certain portion of your life it occupies, and you're not allowing that to bleed into other parts and hurt yourself in ways that because in that case, like. How is this showing up in other parts of your life? Do you go to work and there's also parts of work that get you so irrationally angry that you can't handle it? That's going to show up in your gameplay too. So I think if you can at least understand that behavior in the game and how it applies, like where the lines are crossed and where they're not crossed, then that will help in other parts of your life too, to be like, oh, I get it. This is just a game. Oh, I get it. That's just work, right? It's not me.
And it's not always easy.
The game is an extension of me, but it's not me.
Yeah, it's not always easy, and we don't always succeed at like keeping our heads out of these things because, we're gamers and we get into the things we're playing and we care about
we made financial investments into the game. We've made time. It's our passion. It's our hobby.
But it's still good to try.
Even fishermen have bad days.
Yep. A good way that like I don't think you necessarily if you concede you have to sit at the table the whole time, but a good way to end the game on good terms, I think even if you go onto a different table or you go play a different game, is to come back and be like, how'd that game end?
Yeah.
Yep.
Find out how the story ended because you were a part of it and like you knew at least the first half of the thing, and then the people get to tell their cool story and you get the closure and they get some amount of closure as well, which is nice.
I think you also might find that if you concede early and then sit at the table, you might think, man, I shouldn't have conceded. Oh, wow, that got played?
Oh, gee.
That would have changed things for me. I had this in
I'm a doofus.
What did I do?
Oh, no, and now everyone knows.
Everyone knows I'm a doofus. So I want to end on a couple more definitive questions. Should Commander players concede more or less?
Try it out.
Sure.
If you have never conceded before and you find yourself in a situation where you think a concession might be the right thing to do, just try it. And you'll find out what it feels like, how it plays out, and all that stuff in your specific scenario. But I think if you've never, ever conceded a game before, don't be afraid to just because you think that people are not going to like you or whatever. Like we've explained in this episode, there's a lot of ways to communicate about it. And it can be done in a way that may benefit the overall health of your mental health. And also just like, we want players to keep playing the game for as long as possible. So if a concession can help in that, go for it.
Yeah, I think players should probably concede like slightly more because I think that there are situations where you're not enjoying a game that people stick in a little too often.
Yeah.
But I also think on the other end of that is that we should try and foster like if someone concedes and it's at a reasonable thing, that people should be okay with that.
Yeah.
You're not salty about them conceding and being like, oh, well, okay, you say we ruined the game for you. It's like, no, they just weren't continuing to enjoy it. It wasn't working for them.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, I think conceding shouldn't be taken lightly. I don't think it's something that you can do as flippantly as you would in 1v1. Like all the time in 1v1, I'm like, ugh, this brawl game is done, out. Ugh. But like in like that, I would never do that in Commander because it's a social experience. I'm here to hang out. But if there's extenuating circumstances or if you just know your outs are done, then get onto a new game where that game is more fun. Let's get back to playing.
Now, I will say
is the idea.
there are specific Commander players who I think should concede less.
We all know.
Name names, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it just shouldn't be done lightly, I don't think. Because, there's a lot more game to play.
Yeah. Don't make everyone else's experience worse as a result of your concession, generally.
Yeah.
That would be my ground floor rule.
But feel comfortable conceding if it benefits you emotionally or healthfully.
Get out
You just
of
need
there.
to eat or pee, and it's
Yeah.
going to take a little bit. Go on.
I always need to
on.
eat and pee. Should I be
Both time
conceding?
at the same time?
No. But there may be a case
Wait a
where I
minute.
have to.
That leaves only one question.
Why are you eating and peeing? No.
Why are you eating and peeing at the same time? That's a big question.
That is
That's
a
a
big
question for
question.
after the episode.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, one question. Here we go. Thank you.
Conceding is salty. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
Yeah.
With an asterisk.
fiction.
It's a fiction.
Yeah, I think it's fiction.
Unless you do it in a salty way.
Yeah, there you go.
Then
yeah.
it's fact.
Yeah. Conceding in general is a real thing, and you should not be afraid to do it for the aforementioned reasons. But please don't do it at the expense of everyone else's fun.
Yep.
To the listeners, what do you think about conceding in Commander games? Let us know in the comments. Do you guys concede a lot? Do you never concede? I'm
Yeah.
curious. It's got to be different in every playgroup. It's different in all of our playgroups.
I want to know what their corner cases is of like the real wild concessions that happen.
Yeah,
I want to
tell
know.
us-
Tell us a
your
cool
big
story.
conceding story when you scooped and then suddenly you would have won.
Yeah.
You have a Platinum Angel out, but you concede, but you can't lose the game.
Oh.
What now?
What now?
That actually does still lose you the game.
Yeah, you still lose. Your angel goes first and then you lose.
Yep.
Yeah,
If you want to pick up a Platinum Angel or any other wacky wild cards like Warp World to force a concession, go to cardkingdom.com/command as our sponsor for the show. They will have all the magic product that you need to outfit your deck and make it stronger or wackier or wilder than usual. cardkingdom.com/command. They are our affiliate. So if you use that link, you're supporting the show directly through helping us and helping yourself get the cards that you need all in one convenient package directly to your doorstep. Once again, cardkingdom.com/command.
And once those cards are in your hand, you got to keep them safe. You got to keep them organized. Go to ultrapro.com/command to pick up the highest quality magic accessories in the business.
Yeah.
They have all of the officially licensed magic art. If there's a set that really strikes your fancy, if you're really into the new Ether Drift sort of street style art, it's very fun and cool. Ether Drift's got a cool vibe to it. So you can pick up sleeves, playmats, binders, deck boxes, everything that you need to keep your cards looking good and staying organized. They've got the Mana 8 line, which is high quality, bright white playmats with the logo in the middle. Perfect if you want to get them signed or if you want to get them doodled on. You can get the playmat and the sleeves, the deck box, even the binders, which will keep your collection organized and gorgeous. Plus, it's Ultra Pro, so you know it's the highest quality stuff. It's going to make sure that your cards stay safe and they look cool while doing it. If you haven't checked out what they've got lately, go to their website. We love everything that they offer. If you do happen to get your playmat signed, or if you have a special one at home that's been sitting in a box because you don't want to use it, you don't want to ruin it, you can put it in one of the playmat display cases, hang it on the wall. It's pretty sweet. Ultra Pro stuff is always the best. We trust them with our own collections. We use all Ultra Pro stuff here over at the office. Again, check them out at ultrapro.com/command. And before we go, we're going to say thank you to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Thank you to Rachel Kendra, Karina Cruz, Sebastian Salazar, Gaurav Galati, Jamie Block, Jake Boss, Eric Lem, Josh Murphy, Manson Lung, Christopher Matista, Evan Limburger, Sam Waldo, Josh Lee Kwai, and of course, Jordan Pridgeon, taking the time to talk about conceding with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time to watch, everybody. We will see you next time.
I concede out of this podcast.
No, I concede.
Oh, wait, I win.